It's a pool day. I'm at the pool. I said in my summer reading plan that I was like, you'll have pool days over the summer. And I was like, yeah, that sounds actually kind of nice. So here I am at the pool reading Concrete Rose. And I am in love with this book. I have just finished the first part of the book, so I'm about a third of the way through. It's amazing. It's like, this book is so speaking to me right now. And I can't honestly remember. I feel like Angie Thomas did this in The Hate You Give, where like the lyric of Tupac, The Hate You Give, was very much a theme throughout the book. Concrete Rose is obviously a reference to his poem, The Rose That Grew from Concrete. And I have to say, that symbol, the symbol of the rose growing from concrete, is such a huge part of this book. Even in the way that the parts are set up, there's 3 parts to this book. The first part is called Germination, which I assume is referring to like the seedling of the rose. The second part is called Growth, obviously the growth of the rose. And then the third part is called Dormancy. And we learn in the first part of the book that roses have this period of dormancy that they go through during the winter time. And so I think that is like clearly a symbol of Maverick's path in this book. And it's just such a prominent symbol in this whole, at least in the whole first part. It's so prominent. Like, it's such a big part of the book. So I feel like if you haven't read The Rose That Grew from Concrete, which is a poem I actually used in one of my poetry videos several years ago, The Rose That Grew from Concrete by Tupac is such an amazing poem. It's a beautiful poem, and it's also like such a great companion to this book. You have to read it to feel like to get that symbol to go along with it. On the flip side of that, I don't think you really have to read The Hate You Give, which goes along with Concrete Rose, is like the sequel. You don't necessarily have to read The Hate You Give to read this book and appreciate it. There's a lot of, hello birds, they want to say hi. There's a lot of references to The Hate You Give in Concrete Rose. Like, there's a lot of moments where it's like, if you've read The Hate You Give, you know what's coming in Concrete Rose, right? Like, obviously we know a little bit of Maverick's story in The Hate You Give through Star, through her telling of what, her father went through when he was a teen. I feel like you could read Concrete Rose as a standalone without reading The Hate You Give. I don't know why you wouldn't, because it's like such an amazing story to read both. But yeah, there's a lot of nods, there's a lot of references, and obviously all of the people who are adults in The Hate You Give are teenagers in this book in the 90s. And that's the other thing about this book. So this book is on our 8th grade summer reading list. It's an advanced book, and I don't think it's advanced because of the writing. So normally when you think of advanced books, you think, oh, it's a difficult book to read, right? There's like high vocabulary and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that that's true about this book, because this book is written in a dialect, or is that the right term? Yeah. A dialect of young black teenage boys in the 90s, right? So there's a lot of slang. There's a lot of like forms of words that like are shortened or slang terms. Like it's a very true voice of that time period, of that culture, of that age group. So yeah, so it's not necessarily hard to read. I'd say it's really easy to read. It's very captivating to read. I wouldn't say that the pacing is like, I think the pacing is on point. Like I'm anxious to read the next part of it. I'm anxious to know what happens next. And it does, suck you in. However, I think the main reason why this book is considered advanced is because there are a lot of adult themes and concepts and experiences. While Mav is a 16-year-old boy, he's going through a period in his life where he literally has to just grow up, and it makes him, have to step into fatherhood very early and start taking care of a 3-month old baby by himself. He's a part of a gang, which he was born into, which also makes him have a lot of pressure, not just on, being a part of the gang and being involved in the gang activities, but also pressure on himself to be a man, to be strong, be this, this rock, not just for his mom, but for his girlfriend, for his baby boy, for his family, and pressure on himself to be tough and be hard, right? Because that's the whole image, right? Especially in his gang, the King Lords. So, like, if you think, like, going back to the symbol of the rose growing from concrete, it's very clearly Mav is this rose, right? Because he is such a genuine young man and he really wants to do the right thing. He's not necessarily trying to abandon his child. When he realizes he's the father, he steps in and immediately starts taking care of him, trying to contact the mother of the child and, communicate with her, taking care of his mom still, trying to help her pay bills, trying to take care of his family, and also still trying to build a relationship with his girlfriend, who obviously feels extremely betrayed. And so there's so much pressure on him to be a good person, and he still wants to be a good person. Meanwhile, he's having to involve himself in dangerous activities like selling drugs and gang activity. And when his big brother is like really encouraging him to not be as involved in the gang activity and not sell drugs and be a better man for his son and be a better person than his father was, or even that his big brother was, and like pushing him almost out of the game and trying to set him straight, kind of adds more pressure when his big brother is murdered and he feels like he needs to be the one to take care of it. So it's like, it's like all of these hugely adult concepts and themes happening to a young person, which really is not uncommon, especially for him having grown up in the gang, being born into the gang and stuff like that. So I feel like there's so much to break down with this book. It's such an amazing story, and the way that Angie Thomas is setting up the symbolism is just, I'm so here for it. I'm loving it. But huge caution, huge warning, very adult concepts, adult themes. There's drugs, obviously. There's sex, obviously. There's, the consequences of those things. There's murder, gang violence, all of that stuff. So, but amazing, amazing book so far. So excited to get into the next part. See you soon. Hey, so I have finished the second part of Concrete Rose. I'm about 2/3 of the way through now, and just want to give you a little update on kind of how I'm feeling. This book is so real, like the way that Maverick is written is just so real. Like, he is clearly a teenage boy who understands like his bad decision making, but is also a teenage boy making decisions on impulses in the environment that he's grown up in, that he's been put into. I really do like the way that like he as a character is very much focused on doing the right thing. Like, even though he understands that he's made bad choices and that they have kind of like affected his life, he still is ready to stick to them. Like, he's still ready to be there. He's not trying to like cop out or trying to get out of the situation at all. a couple of the main things, like the other thing, I guess the other things that I really like about the rest of the characters is that they're also very real. Like they're not like coddling him in any way. They all have their own motivations and desires and thoughts and like resentments. And it's still, I will say, it's been a while since I've read The Hate You Give. So I don't remember too much about like what Maverick says to his daughter in that book about what happened when she was born, when Seven was born. But I will say that the characters that are in this book that come back again in The Hate You Give as adults are very much true to those characters. Like obviously they've grown up, there's changes that have happened, but to a certain extent they haven't changed as people. And so the characters are still very true to how Angie Thomas wrote them in The Hate You Give, right? And they're still very real. Like they're still very real people, still very real teenagers going through a lot of the same thing. Some of the themes that I really enjoy in this book right now, especially in this second part, growth, is about Maverick's coming to terms with his like masculinity and who he is and what it means to be a man and what it means to be a father and other people's opinions in it, especially. At the end of this part though, you know, Maverick realizes that he's been basically backed up into a corner. You know, he has Seven to take care of, he has a baby on the way, and he is trying to still help his mom with the bills and support her as well. And he understands that the choices that have been afforded to him are not good choices, right? Like the options that he has available to him are not effective enough to get him where he needs to be, where he wants to be, how he wants to support his family. And so like he's essentially been like backed into a corner. And I really love that he doesn't lose sight of like what's right, but he recognizes that he has to do some wrong things, some illegal things in order to do the right thing, which is provide for his family. So yeah, it's a really tough book, but I feel like there's so much there about Maverick kind of understanding who he is and understanding what it means to be a father and still trying to do what's right and use the opportunities that he has and the avenues that he has in order to kind of attain his goals, and do the right thing and to help the people in his life. And it just is like there's so much going on here, and it's so very much a reflection of Tupac's work. Not just like there's also like a lot of like the theme of The Hate You Give coming through in that, and how that became like a motto for Maverick growing up into his fatherhood, and how he passed that on to Star and Seven, and especially this symbol of the rose that grew from concrete, because it's so clear, right, that Maverick is the rose that grew from concrete. He is this really good, beautiful person who's trying to do the right thing and be a good human being and being a good father and a good son and a good person, but still being in this very high pressure, you know, situation. Also the fact I just realized him being in the garden, like Garden Heights being the neighborhood he grows up in, the garden, him being the rose. It's such a beautiful way to tell this story. Like there's just so much here, and I feel like as a young person reading this is definitely an opportunity to read this book multiple times and still get a different interpretation out of it and to see all of the layers in Maverick. Something that I did not mention in my last little check-in was that this was written, okay, so time period is the 1990s, right? So Maverick's a teen in the 90s. There's a couple of times where I feel like if you don't know that time period, you're not going to understand some of the references. But at the same time, if you know, I mean, if you've talked to older people, people like me, then maybe you understand some of the reference, or maybe you can look up some of the references. But I feel like people still know, obviously, Michael Jordan is still very much an icon. Kobe Bryant is still very much an icon. They were very much icons in the 90s, especially for the Black community. So I guess that is, I guess you don't need to like miss, you haven't missed too much if you're a young person reading this book. But I feel like this is a book that's like a young adult book that's written for more than just young adults. I feel like you could be an adult and really appreciate this book for what the story tells. It's also not a very difficult read. I am blowing through this whole thing. I feel like I'm like, okay, like looking at the pages, I'm like, okay, I've got 100 pages to go before the next part, and it feels like no time at all has passed before I'm at the next part. So I'm like, it's really, really quick. The writing just really keeps you captivated, and it just goes by so quickly. Like the story just like really sucks you in, and the characters really pull you in. And Maverick, especially, being this person who you are rooting for, but you know has really kind of done a lot of things that maybe are questionable and he hasn't really thought through. But at the same time, like, you're still rooting for him. You're still wanting him to like succeed. So I'm just enjoying this book so much, and I cannot wait to read the ending. I kind of know, obviously, I know how it goes, right? Because the story in The Hate U Give happens, but I'm still really anxious to see what happens to Maverick and how he overcomes some of this, or how he navigates through the rest of these obstacles. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So, okay, on to the next one. Okay. Hi, everyone. It has been a really, really tough day, and it seems like it's just getting worse. Okay, that's literally perfect. That's literally where the light needs to be. Okay, hello. I did not put on any lipstick. Okay. We're here. We're finally here. I finally made it to this moment. I finished Concrete Rose, and I have to be 100% honest. My day has been worse off because of it, because I finished this amazing book, and now I don't know where to go from here. I really don't. I loved this book so much. Finished it early this morning, right as I woke up. I just finished the last third of the book, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop reading. And I started out my day crying because of it, because it's just, I couldn't help it. And I think maybe that's what's made this day so difficult to get through. So, I have a lot of thoughts on this book. I think that this is a really amazing book. I think I mentioned earlier how it's, the book is split up into 3 parts, but there is an epilogue called Bud, which is like the baby version of a rose, right? It's like when a rose begins to bloom, right? You see the little bud, and it's going to turn into a flower. And I loved that. I thought that was beautiful, and it kind of gives you this whole story about Star and how they get her name, how Mav and Lisa decide on her name. The story is a happy ending. I think, if you read The Hate U Give, you kind of know that, it's all going to work out, but it just still gives you this sense of like intense, tension, so to speak, if I could say that, as you're nearing the end of this book. Because obviously that Mav is still associated with the gang in the Garden Heights, and he still lives there in The Hate U Give, but not so much as he is in this book, right? Like, this is kind of his story growing up. And I will say, finishing this book really made me want to read The Hate U Give again, just to kind of go back. And now that I have all of this knowledge about Mav's history and the other adults that are in that book, their history as well, Um, yeah, I really love this book. I think that Maverick is such an interesting character, and to have all of these influences on him and to come through as like a real kid, like a real person who had struggles growing up. I also feel like I could share a lot of my opinions about this book, and it doesn't really matter because I'm coming from this perspective as a white person who's never really understood what it's like to be in Maverick's situation or in Lisa's situation. And I think that this is the type of book that you do want to talk to other people about. Like, this is one of those books, just like The Hate You Give, that you should share with people and have conversations with and talk about things with, because I think that there are other opinions and perspectives and experiences that should be shared, and I want to kind of get that. That's something that I want. So I hope that this vlog opens some conversations for you all so you can share your thoughts on it, and comments on it, especially, because I'm open to it. I want to hear what other people think and what other people have to say. I definitely recommend this as a read. A lot of students, when I tell them how many pages are in the book, it does give them pause. I'm not gonna lie. There are 360 pages in this book, and a lot of students nowadays, they see that number, they're like, that's a lot of pages. It doesn't feel like 360 pages. I'm not gonna lie. I think that no matter where your reading level is at, no matter how quick or how slow of a reader you are, I think you can read this book and still really enjoy it and still be very captivated by it. I did not think it was a very slow story at all. I thought it was very incredibly quick, almost too quick. All of these things that happen to Maverick just come up so quickly, and like, I feel like it's one of those books, like, you really could read it for like in a week. It's possible. You could do it. And I hope that you do, and I hope you do share your comments with me. I am interested to see what other people think about this, because it is one of those books. It's one of those books that asks for conversation and invites conversation, invites interaction with others, other perspectives, other thoughts, other opinions. So please do share them in the comments. Highly, highly recommend this book. So far, out of the 2 books that I'm planning to do reading vlogs for this year, this summer, Concrete Rose is my favorite. Favorite so far. Teared up at the end. Even the summer reading stream that I did for Nothing But the Truth, this one still beats it out by far. That I do still like Nothing But the Truth. I think it's a really great book, but I do think this one is a lot more relevant and powerful and interesting and captivating. Really, really, really a good one. Highly recommend. Not just for our 7th graders going into 8th grade, but everybody. Everybody should read it, my opinion. Plus, the cover is beautiful. The cover on all of Angie Thomas's books are really incredible. She definitely should give some props to the cover designers, because this one especially is amazing. I love the theme of the Concrete Rose, and I love Angie Thomas's writing. I love how she shares his story. This is a great one. This is going on my favorite shelf for sure. So check it out, Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. I'm not going to give away spoilers on this one. I'm not going to talk too much about the detail because I feel like I don't need to. I feel like you should read this book and, experience that for yourself. Keep some tissues nearby. If you're a crier, even if you're not a crier, you'll still feel something, okay? Like, it's okay to cry when you read a book. I think that's definitely true with this. So, that being said, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to follow up Concrete Rose. I'm not going to lie. I have got other books on my shelf that I want to read. I've got other things on my shelf I want to do. It's going to be hard to pick myself up after this one and find another book that's going to give me the same kind of feeling that this book did. So I'll hope. I've got some more on my shelf that I'm going through. So we'll see this summer. We'll see how it goes. And yeah, Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.